Hi, Jeff at Tone. Say, how's it going today? Well, I've got a couple of speakers here that I think definitely adhere to my principle that refinement costs more money. So, what I've got is the Wharfedale Super Linton, which now think I think the MSRP is right around $3,000 because tariffs. We won't even talk about that. And the Dovedale. Both of these are part of the Wharfedale Heritage series, and because they kind of harken back to the stuff that Wharfedale made decades ago. For those of you that didn't know, Wharfedale, I'm pretty sure, is about 75, 76 years old now. So they've been making speakers for a long time. Another thing we'll put to bed before we start in on this is you'll notice I have the grills on. If you're like me, you probably like looking at your speakers in the room with the grills off so you can see the drivers. Totally with you on that. However, just like Harbeth, Wharfedale suggests that you leave the grills on and that the speakers are voiced for the speakers having the grills in place. Now, again, for all of us that never read the manual or never see any of that stuff or choose to ignore the manual because, why not? I did try them without the grills on and listen to them back and forth repeatedly. They're a little bit more forward sounding. I mean, it's not a ton, but you'll definitely hear them. There's a little tiny bit of absorption going on in that grill that they've kind of voiced around. And so it's almost like moving up about 5 seats in the hall if you take the grills off. So forewarned is forearmed, just so you know. And you know what? You might still like them better with the grills off anyway. But telling you what they say from the big chair. Anyway, as you can see, these speakers are, fairly close in size, though the Dovedales are considerably deeper and weigh about twice as much. The Super Linton is an 8-inch three-way. The Dovedale is a 10-inch three-way. Again, where's the cost increase coming, and what's the difference, and why might you want to buy one instead of the other? I mean, in case you're looking at these, I know if it were me, my question would be, well, do I want, the large drink, or do I want the supersized drink, and why? So hopefully I can unravel a little bit of that for you. Both of these are really good, very neutral sounding speakers. They're not, I would say, the comparisons that come immediately to mind for me in approximate price, approximate usability would be any of the Harbeths and probably the JBL L100 Classic, because that's another one of these kind of big bookshelf, but not really bookshelf-y kind of speakers. Compared to the JBL L100 Classics, which I own a pair, so I've had them for quite a while as a reference, and I'm a fan because I've liked JBLs from way back. The JBLs are definitely more of a rock and roll speaker. They've got a little bit more of a pitched response at both ends. They're a little punchier. I'd say they're probably a little more colored than either of these are. These are a little more neutral tonally. And then maybe by comparison, let's say we look at something like the Harbeth Compact 7, which is also a huge favorite speaker of mine. I've had Compact 7s a couple of times. A number of friends of mine have them, so I listen to Harbeths quite a bit. I've had the 40.1s. One of our staff has the 40.3s. So I'm a pretty big fan of the Harbeth sound as well. But where the JBLs sound a little bit forward, these and the Harbeths probably sound a little bit laid back, almost like maybe going back a couple more rows in the auditorium compared to these. These are fairly neutral. They've got a really nice, very nice mid-range. They're extended on top, but they're not harsh. They're not bright. So what's the difference? What are you getting for $3,000 versus what are you getting for almost $7,000 a pair? And keep in mind that price is with their stands. Now, probably should mention also that these are not the Wharfedale stands. I just have these here just to kind of keep the speakers at the same height. The Wharfedale stands are optimized to get the tweeter height right about where you want it to be for your ear, One thing you'll notice if you get a chance to maybe listen to these at a dealer or at a show, or even if you buy a pair, they've got good horizontal dispersion, but the dispersion is more from about here down on both speakers. The horizontal dispersion up here is not so much. My guess is that that is to kind of minimize any kind of effect you might have from your ceiling or anything like that, which is good. However, you really will have to be, when you're setting these up, you'll have to be really careful to get that tweeter height just about right to your ears. The Wharfedale stands should get you there, but in case your chair or your couch is very low or very high, the Wharfedale stands actually have spiked cones on the bottom, so you can kind of tip them up a little bit, tip them down a little bit. If you have either one of these speakers set up in your room, in your system, you'll notice that if they sound a little bit muffled or they sound a little bit dead, your tweeter height's not right. So you're gonna have to tip them up just a tiny bit. You can get a good idea for that when you're listening. Just take your head and kind of go up and down a little bit real slowly, and you'll either have it right on the money from the stands the way they are, or you'll notice the sweet spot's either a little bit up here or a little bit down there. A little adjustment on the cones, you'll be good to go. But again, back to what really makes these speakers, what makes for the delta between these two. I believe this speaker has an 86 dB with 1 watt. I think these are 87, pretty sure. Check the WharfedaleUSA.com website just to be double sure on the spec. Either way, both speakers are very easy to drive with tubes or with solid state. Both, I'd say get more in the range of 40, 50, 60 watts a channel. Another thing that I noticed about these speakers that is excellent is that they've got very good linearity, so that when you're playing them at a very low volume level, they still reveal pretty much music. Some speakers, not all speakers, can do that. They play good, say from medium to loud. These play well from quiet all the way up to loud, and they will play pretty loud if you've got a big amp. I mean, if you've got a 100 or a 200 watt per channel amplifier, you can really rock these. I mean, they've got a lot of dynamic range. They play loud, very clean, without the soundstage disappearing or collapsing. And maybe some speakers you've noticed that when you really start cranking up your favorite music, you kind of feel that sound field kind of condensing just a little bit. Both are very good. But back to what's the difference between X and 2.1X in price. Part of it, these are made in China. These are made in the UK. So we've obviously got some labor differences, shipping differences. Again, we're going to have some tariff differences, blah, blah. One thing, there's really no difference that's really impressive, because Wharfedale, I don't know how much you know about Chinese manufacturing in the audio industry, but there's a couple different ways that companies go about it. Some companies really look at Chinese manufacturing as more of a subcontractor type of thing. Wharfedale, who is also the same company behind Quad and a few other big names in audio, they're like Bowers and Wilkins. They're like Prima Luna. They have their own factory in China with their own people overseeing every step of the manufacturing process. So they've got a pretty tight rein on what's going on. As a result, the difference in the cabinets between the Chinese cabinet and the UK cabinet is very close. I mean, they're really, really close. If you really look at these with a very, very discerning eye, you'll notice that the finest joints on the Chinese cabinet is not quite as precise as it is on the English-built cabinet. The grill cloth on the English-built cabinet is, again, a little bit finer. Not a big difference. But what the real difference between these two speakers, and honestly, I think justifies the difference in price, I see these speakers as really going for two different systems, where the Super Linton is a great $3,000 speaker. I would have no reservation putting this in, let's say, a $5,000 to $20,000 ish system, depending on whether you have two sources or not, what you're looking at, amplification, how much you feel like spending on cables. And if that's kind of where you think you're going to end up in your hi-fi journey, I think these will serve you real well. The Dovedale, definitely, at the risk of sounding silly, it does more everywhere. It's more of a speaker. To make that a little more clear, the Dovedale goes down deeper. I mean, if you're somebody who likes a fair amount of hip hop, if you like a lot of electronica, if you like music that's really got a lot of deep bass information, you'll definitely be served better with these. They'll go deeper, they'll go louder. Everywhere throughout the musical spectrum, good as these are better. The main difference, think about the main difference between these two. It's almost like this is like 800 or 1,000 grit sandpaper. These are more like 100 grit sandpaper. Tonally, these speakers are very, very similar. Resolution aside, tonally, these speakers are very similar. The team that designed both of these speakers, you can tell they came from the same place. They have a very similar voice. If you're listening to acoustic guitar or a small string quartet, something like Crosby, Stills and Nash, or whatever your favorite vocal music is, at a modest level in a medium-sized room, they're very, very similar. But as you play more complex music, more dynamic music, you're playing louder, you're playing in a bigger room where you need the fill, it's pretty easy to hear how much more these reveal. So for you, that's the decision. Where do you think your hi-fi journey is going to stop? These, you could easily, we match these up with some bigger, some more high performance integrated amps. We started with the Rose RS520, which is an excellent amp at about $3,000. We used the Prima Luna Evo. We used the Audio Research i50. I used the Java Single Shot, which is a great Class D integrated. I even used these with the $50,000 CH Precision i1 that we recently reviewed. So I think, depending on what you see as how far you'd like to take things, that for me would probably determine, do I want to spend the extra money on these now because I know at some point maybe I'm going to be getting a better or a bigger integrated or a bigger power amp, or maybe I know down the road I'm going to improve my sources. But as the anchor to a really nice $10,000-ish system, the Super Lintons are fantastic. I mean, they're really good. These just offer, again, the Dovedale is more defined, it's more resolving, it paints a larger sound field in a room than these do. And again, if you go to the Wharfedale site, they explain how the internals of the cabinet are made on the Dovedale. So it's a more sophisticated enclosure, it's more sophisticated crossover, again, which contributes to a more refined sound. But both of these, I mean, I easily can recommend both of these. I mean, they're great speakers. They come with stands. They're very well finished. I mean, these have a classic hi-fi look, which you either dig or you don't. And if you do, there you go. These are both very good value for the money, made from a company that's been in high-end audio for a very, very long time. And so that's something I hope these are two that you might consider as you're building your system further. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.